Time for the final part of the pre-race interviews for the Montane Winter Spine Race 2024. A lot of the Spine family are already together in Edale now. I am releasing this episode on the morning that registration opens. So there are already nervous runners milling about in Edale. They are getting prepared to have their kit checked, sign their paperwork, and then they'll have just one more nervous night's sleep before they take to the trail tomorrow. That'll be the runners in the Challenger South and the MRT Challenge South. So the race is right on top of us, and I'm going to finish the set of pre-race interviews with some fantastic guests. First up, we've got Pavel and Eoin, and both are runners who were among a small group who absolutely dominated the early years of this race. In terms of knowledge of the course and ability to cope in the very, very changeable conditions out there, you couldn't look for much higher caliber people than these two. And as Ian Keith showed in 2022, the Spine race is absolutely not all about speed. So they've got some fantastic insights for us. Now, of course, it would have been great to have spoken to the three musketeers, as it were. Eugenie was obviously a big part of that early story of the race. We didn't manage to tie that together, but we will do our best to speak to him during the event, and he will be there. Our last guest is James Nobles, an outstanding runner coming to us for the first time. James has a fantastic caliber as an athlete. He is a Dragon's Back winner, and he is eager. He is excited. You can tell from the interview that he is genuinely looking forward to this experience, and we are all looking forward to seeing what he can do out there on the course. So without further ado, this is the last installment of our pre-race interviews. From here on out, it's all going to be live event coverage. Stick with us over the next week, folks. Good afternoon, then. Once again, always a pleasure to Ian Keith. It's fantastic to talk to you, Ian. How are you doing?
Great. It's fantastic to talk to you as well. I always love these things.
Yeah, speaking to you is really always a turning point for me. It's like, if I've spoken to Ian Keith, there's a Spine race is definitely coming up. Yeah.
And as it happens, it's a turning point for me as well, because I've done a great job of not really thinking about the spine to this point, but now I have to turn my spine brain on to answer all the questions. So here we go, another turning point.
Sorry to force you into that. But yeah, it's coming up, as I'm sure you've no doubt realised looking at the calendar. It's this weekend.
Well, if the calendar doesn't tell me the weather does, that's for sure.
Yeah. Is there a great deal of point in looking at a weather forecast before a Spine race?
Not really, though, because it's not going to alter anything, really. It does. You have to bring gear for everything, because you never know what's going to happen for the weather. Apart from the fact that we're going to get bad weather. That's depends on which definition of bad it's going to be, but it'll be extreme in some direction.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt at all. Now, obviously, I mean, I haven't really introduced you here, Ian, because I didn't feel like it was really necessary to anyone who knows anything about the Spine race. But for the benefit of anyone who is listening to this and is a little uninitiated, we are talking to a 3-time winter winner, a summer winner. We are talking to somebody who knows this race backwards and forwards. So it's amazing to be able to speak to you, knowing that we're about to have a kind of reunion of the Three Musketeers, as I referred to you just before I started this call.
Yeah, not just that. It's practically almost everyone who's been there over the years at the front of the field. It's amazing. And, the obvious missing person is Jasmine, but she is, her husband is turning up. So, yeah, it's almost everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can imagine how excited we've been at this side watching that roster come together.
Yeah, it's amazing to see it. I thought I'd be the last of the late comers coming in, but of course there's been at least 2 more since then, so it's fascinating. And even for me, it's quite exciting to see it. I have to say, it's great, really great.
I mean, how exciting was it for you to see Pav and Eugenie there? Because that, for me, and for quite a lot of the people who've been involved with the Spine for a few years now, the three of you were like a perennial feature of the early Spine races. It was going to be, chances are, it was going to be you three duking it out somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's great to see it back. I mean, just from a personal point of view, it's great. It'll be great to see them physically and talk to them again, and it'll be great to be out there on the course again. So yeah, I think it's great, and you add in, of course, the new boys, who are even just as phenomenal and beyond, and yeah, it makes it all very exciting, and it's actually the mix that makes it interesting, because there's a lot of different dynamics going on there, which it makes a very hard race to call this year in lots of ways.
Now it really does, and I think back to your sort of, is it 2022, the 10-year anniversary race?
Yeah.
And your win there, which was excellent, it sort of it proved a point to everybody that there's speed, and then
there's all the other stuff.
Yeah, then there's all the other stuff, and that year, all the other stuff. I mean, that plays right into your hands, right? You watched everything that happened ahead of you, and then in you came, and it was a glorious moment. Absolutely,
yeah. It's one of my favorite race wins ever. Just the nature of it was so out there, there's so many of the Swiss cheese model really had to line up there. All the holes had to align for me to just sneak through and get the win there, and I didn't really see it coming till very late in the day, so that makes it all the better. Occasionally you go into a race fully confident that you're ready, you have it there, and if everything goes right, you'll win. That was not that race. So it was completely the opposite, in fact. So when the win did pop out, I was absolutely ecstatic. It was the last thing I was expecting, to be honest. So yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, you could tell you were ecstatic. My photos from that finish line are among my favorites. That was great stuff. But the sort of narrative behind the scenes that year was, oh, look at this. We've got the sort of newer runners have come in and been really fast, and then there's Ian Keith. You can never write off somebody who's got this kind of control of the other elements of the race. It understands the kit requirements, the pacing, the sleep deprivation, and all the other, all the other difficult stuff that comes along with the spine race.
Yeah, and perhaps the trickiest one for a lot of people is actually just running your own race, which of course is the key to me doing there, and stay within my own abilities and not get too involved at racing other people and just letting them away to make, as it turned out, to make their own mistakes or misfortune. And that's quite tricky to do when you're in a tense race environment. And this year it's going to be an extreme race environment because there's never been so many top end runners in the race. And that in itself will affect the race because, they'll all want to win, but they'll be facing, the toughest opponents they could possibly get, because, even looking at the FKT for the Pennine Way, John Kelly and Damien are right on top of each other. And, there's no separating those two. It'll be form on the day, they're pretty much equal. Jack Scott proved last year that he was able to match Damien, and then you have all the rest of us following on who have skill sets that are pretty decent and can take advantage of any of those two. So the end result is likely to be, people will end up possibly over-pressurizing themselves and being over-competitive, so mistakes will be made. And that just makes it more fun and interesting, for everyone. Let's face it.
Oh, God, yeah,
the
absolutely.
The dot watchers are the big winners here.
Yeah, this is going to be a good January to be a dot watcher, and no doubt. I'm looking at this thinking, wow, this is going to be one of the hardest spine races I've worked in Liverpool. Yeah. I can just see this being another event where I'm going to have to rewrite the podium 3 times a day.
Hopefully,
but yeah.
It makes it all far more interesting when it goes that way, and that's the great thing about the spine, because it goes over so many days. Even when someone looks like they're comfortable at the front, anything can happen at any time, as we've seen so many times over the years. So nothing is ever settled until you actually cross the finish line, which is great,
Yeah, that's why none of us ever sleep working behind the scenes. You can nod off for a 15-minute nap and have the favourite person drop out of the event all of a sudden.
Yeah, randomly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the sword's hanging over everybody out on that course. And I guess to sort of meander back to where I was starting that thought, I've spoken to Pav already. we talked a little bit about how the race has kind of changed a bit over the years and people's approaches have changed a bit over the years. I mean, what are your observations in that area?
I think really, to be honest, I don't think it's changed that much. Probably the biggest change was when Tom Hollands won as a supported runner, and that was the end of the supported category, which was a good thing because it kind of, it could have gone into a support arms race, but that cut it off there, and now we're all running unsupported, which makes things simpler. But to be honest, there hasn't been a lot of big changes beyond that, apart from the fact that the standard has been creeping up and up and up. And, it's been, the people used to think you couldn't break, breaking 100 hours would be hard, really difficult to do, and exceptional. Now it gets broken regularly and this kind of thing. So it's just standard. It happens everywhere, of course, over time, that the standard goes up and up and up and up. But you can even see that in individual runners. Damien is last year's winner, but he's one of the earliest people to run the race. He ran it the year before I ran my first race, and when I did my first race, it was Damien's second. And, I was faster than Damien back then, but Damien has added to his skill sets and become way faster than I am now, way beyond what I could ever do. So even at an individual level, where possible, people are upping their game. And of course, the race has grown to be a much bigger deal now, so it's attracting athletes of a higher caliber. Because now it's a race where you can make your reputation, not an obscure, bizarre race. It's actually a big, prominent race in the UK scene, which everybody knows, and that's great. So that to me is the big change. Standards are up, but it's still the same race fundamentally. It's still the same number of aid stations. We still have to do the same thing, deal with the same whatever the weather will be. The fundamentals are still the same. A lot of my gear is still the same as day one, Yeah,
you got it right first time. It's good to hear you say that, actually. That's kind of gratifying to hear, because obviously, in a way, around the race, a lot's changed. A lot more competitors these days. Some of the people working behind the scenes have changed, and my God, it's grown. There's suddenly more people now and more volunteers required. But the actual, as you say, the Pennine Way is the Pennine Way.
Yeah.
The aid stations are sort of where the aid stations are, with not much movement, if we can help it.
Yeah,
with the spirit of the race, we've tried to maintain, and it's
and that's been highly successful. The spirit of anything is only getting better, which is a good thing. It started good, and it's and it remains excellent. So that's and that's the big plus. The whole Spine family thing is the thing that drags me back to it more than anything else. It's just. It's not as much the race itself as I wouldn't want to miss being there with all these people and being immersed with everyone and being part of the race. I love that, and that's what drags me back. And, logically I shouldn't be doing it this year, but it's just that want to come back and be part of the experience is what has me back.
I mean, I've got to emphatically agree with you on that, and I hear that over and over again, and that's just heartwarming every time. That it's that community that people come back for, and that draws people back in.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
A rare thing, and it's a precious thing. There are very few races I do that have that, and the spine kind of sets a standard there, which is great. And it's not something that was ever forced; it just came there organically and continues, and it's great.
I'm not sure what it is that is exactly the secret ingredient in there, and I've now started on a thread where I'm a little worried about how long we're going to be doing this podcast for, but I'm going in. I'm going in, Ian. Whatever it is in the middle that keeps drawing runners and volunteers and everything towards it, just seems to bring out the best in people. We keep bringing in more volunteers who just want to give their time and energy to help people do this big, epically difficult thing.
Yeah, I think it's one of the crazy things is, I've had DNFs over the years, and I sometimes feel guilty about that because I'm letting down all these people, if you know what I mean, this is a bizarre way. I'm kind of less worried about letting myself down. That's trivial, I can deal with this, but it's all these other people who invest so much into it and get so much out of it, and it's great, that again is part of the strength. And I think the trick is exactly that, where it's the people, the Spine attracts great people at all across the board, whether they be the racers or the volunteers and people in the background. And you know, over the years, it's been my pleasure to meet people across all levels of it. And, you know, there's no bad people, not a single one. And, you know, it's all good people. It's all people you love being in their company. And, you know, that has gone off in, you know, in the case of several people there where we meet up at other races, like, you know, the Barclay Marathons this year was a bit of a spine reunion out there.
Yes, it was.
It was very much like that. And, you know, it was such a pleasure. And, you know, I ran nearly 2 laps with Tom Hollins, who, you know, I'd first met at the spine, and said to Tom before going to the Barclay that, you know, I would love to team up with him if he wanted to, because just the pleasure of having his company was more than enough for me. That's all I was looking for. And it is like that out there, you know, and it's just, you meet these great people and you want to be in there. You want to hang out with them and chat with them and so on, as well as, of course, race them and hopefully beat them. But that's if they're
competing. Oh yeah, it's still a race.
It's still a race, and it's still competitive, and no matter how much we like each other, we still want to beat everyone else if we get the opportunity, which is the bizarre thing about it. But then everyone's on the same page, so that's good. You know, we all understand that.
Yeah, there's no malice there.
No malice.
That's what we're here for. So
your competition is part of the fun, and that's it. It's not a trace of maliciousness anywhere. You know, it's, you know, no matter what you're doing, you know, anyone could could pull off any kind of maneuver against me. I would never hold it against them. I'd probably just say, "Oh God, that was good racing." You know, well done.
No, that's excellent. It's glad to hear you say it that way, because it's all part of the story in the end, isn't it? And,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned while we were talking there as well. I locked onto sort of one phrase there which was something along the lines of, and you know, obviously it's a bit illogical me doing it this time around, or something there. What exactly? What do you mean? What do you mean there?
The fundamental point there is, and you said it earlier, you know, I have all the skill sets. I no longer have my speed. When I first turned up to the spine, I was confident, you know, Pavel was the huge target to beat. He was this living legend of the race. And I was confident that I knew his weak points and I could beat him with speed applied in the right way. And at that time, I was right. And, you know, that's what I did. Not that time, but the following year, I think it was. And I had enough speed. And that's now completely reversed, because Pavel is younger than me. And I've kind of crossed the threshold when I went into my early 50s, where instead of being able to get a little faster every year, I'm now absolutely guaranteed to be slower every year. So my speed is gone, basically. And even in training, it feels like it's half what I used to be. And there's just very little I can do about it, because I'm getting older and older and older. So all I have to do is accept it and carry on. But I do know I've still got all the skill sets are still there, and all the brain is still there, and all the competitiveness is still there. So, you know, and what I have to do now is, you know, accept the reality that I won't be competing at the front with all these legends, because I just can't do it. I don't have the speed. So I'll let them away and go off and do their thing. And, you know, no doubt someone will take each other out, as mentioned earlier, by going too fast or making various other mistakes. But there's so many good guys this year that I don't think I have a chance of getting remotely near the podium. In fact, I'd say a top 10 would be an amazing result for me this year. But, you know, I'm just retargeted. The target now is just get around and enjoy myself and finish, and enjoy the spectacle of being part of the race. And I'll be watching those front guys and making sure to get all the updates of what's going on. And if something mad did happen, that they all started dropping out, you can be sure I'll be lurking behind as best I can to take full advantage of whatever's going on. The miracle happened once before. It's unlikely to happen again, but you never know. You never know. I'll be there.
There's some humility in describing that as a miracle, because I mean that was skill. You had to be in that position. You had to know what you know to be able to execute what you did. And I mean, you should know that when I talk to people about Ian Keith in the race, generally the gist is you can never write off Ian Keith. And if you're ahead of him, it feels like you've got the Terminator behind you, because you can't afford to make any mistakes.
My favorite review I've ever received was John Kelly basically posting a picture of the Terminator saying exactly that about me in the spine. And, oh man, you know, it's a great review at any time, but from an absolute legend like John Kelly, that's really saying something. And I know why I did it too, because I did catch him twice the year he won. You know, I got in front of him twice for, you know, exactly that reason. It's just pouncing on the mistakes and being there to be able to do it. and definitely caught him by surprise on the second one. And that's all part of the fun and games. And yeah, that's my skill sets, but my problem is my speed it's unlikely to be good enough to even, be close enough to take advantage of it. And that's why I say, I really shouldn't be here in terms of competition. So it's not the competition and trying to win it that's dragging me back this year, which would obviously have been brought me through most years. But, I still want to be here, and it's such a great race to be part of. And, it's nice that everyone knows me as well, because, when I'm out in the course and, people talk to me, and we've got lots of stories to exchange, and people, I love that as well. So that's got me back. That's what brings me back, and that's why I say I shouldn't be there. Even though on paper I look like a potential winner, I know myself not really. But it's still great to be seen to be part of that group, and we have in this year almost every past winner, which is fantastic, and the husband of one past winner who isn't with actually in the race. So yeah, that's great.
It's unbelievable, is what it is, and I love it. One of a number of these kind of fortuitous kind of comings together that seem to happen around this race.
And even better than the Barclay this year. He actually, the Barclay was good in terms of a Spine winners reunion. This is, thankfully and appropriately, this year's Spine is even better.
Ideal. Now look, I did promise I was going to try and keep these under 20 minutes if I could, and I know me and you could probably talk for the next couple of hours, but I'm going to, comfortably. But tapping into your sort of experiences across many years on the Spine race now and all over the world, really, there's going to be somebody listening to this because they're trying to glean one last nugget of useful information out of you guys. So for the sake of those newbies out there, is there any advice you'd give them? They're about to go into the eye of the storm and this weekend. What would you be saying to them now?
I have tons of advice. We're trying to narrow it down.
He was me trying to keep it this short.
Yeah. I mean, the main one is to enjoy it, and try and relax and try and get into the fact that it's a privilege to be here, and just being here is half the goal, and just, getting to the point of being in the start line is amazing. Relax. Don't worry about everything not being perfect, because nothing is perfect for anyone, and we'll all make mistakes. The trick is not to make the mistakes panic you or cause you unnecessary stress. Just deal with them as they come. Deal with any problems as they come. That's the key to the Spine. It's the classic Mike Tyson thing of everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. It's we're all going to get absolutely whacked about the head multiple times. There's no plan will deal with it. So just, realize that, whatever you feel, any nervousness, any apprehension, things that go wrong, everyone else is getting exactly the same thing. You just take it as part of the experience. And as I say, try and enjoy it, try and, even if you're racing at the front, you're still trying to enjoy, you're still making friends, you're still talking to everyone, build all of that, enjoy everything, always have something to look forward to. And of course, the other big one is the eating the elephant analogy. How do you do it? Piece by piece. Don't worry about the big pictures. Just divide everything up into lots of small pictures. Your first task is just to get to Edale. Your second task is to get through the kit checks, and just take them one at a time. And when the race starts, don't ignore the lunatics at the front. Go out at your own pace, run your own race, relax, enjoy. Try and start at the pace you're likely to finish at, and just keep that going nice and comfortable the whole way. That's most the biggest piece of advice. But I suppose the biggest mistake that most people into Mike is going out too hard in terms of, DNFs are quite often very front loaded, and a lot of the races I've been in this year, you can really see front loading at DNFs, which is people getting a bit over enthusiastic at the start, and biting off a little more they can chew. So, just take that elephant in really small chunks, bit by bit.
There you go. I mean, that was an excellent rounding up of the advice someone would need before this race. And yeah, very good advice. There's no prize for getting to the top of Jacob's Ladder first.
No,
So,
no. You would think there is, looking at people, but there isn't. Absolutely, yeah.
no, all that's waiting up there is a photographer lurking behind a rock to get your face as you come up that slope. That's all you've got to look forward to. So
Looking wrecked.
calm down. Yeah, try not to look too wrecked when you get there. Run your own race.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. Well, look, thanks once again, Ian. I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again later in the week.
I can't wait to meet you and everyone else. I mean, now I'm really looking forward to it. I'm starting to get the excitement, not the heebie-jeebies. It's definitely excitement, and it's all such a good thing now. That's the one advantage of having done this so many times. There's no apprehension anymore. It's just all good. It's good.
So good. Amazing. Well, speak to you soon, Ian. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for now. Bye. Good morning, then, to Pavel Paloncy. Pavel, I'm very, very excited to see you today. How are you feeling?
Good morning, Will. Yeah, I feel great. Really looking forward to anything that's going to happen in the next week or two.
Yeah, well, so are we. I was just saying before I started recording this that, we have WhatsApp groups behind the scenes with all the many people that work on the spine racing, and somebody just dropped in there one morning recently, Pav is in. Just those 3 tiny little words, and it went nuts. Like, everyone was so excited. We're incredibly excited that you're back and that you're going to be around for the race in January. There can't be many people listening to this that are fans of the spine race that don't know who you are. But when I first joined the race in 2018 on the media team, you were like the king of the spine race. So Pav was a multiple winner. You were unstoppable, and it's fantastic to see you come back in this time around. So I'm going to ask the obvious question first, which is why? You'd got on, you'd done that. You'd been on that podium a number of times, and you'd gone off and done some amazing things since. Like, your Instagram has incredible adventures on it. So why back this time around?
Well, there's also why I'm asking the question why, but I don't really need the answer, because the answer was always like looming around the corner, and I was thinking, okay, am I coming back? Am I not coming back? And because one thing is that I learned how the race is hard only when I was there, but not racing. I mean, when you race, you just focus on the race. You don't care if it's winter, if it's windy, if it's wet, whatever. But when I was there with the Japanese crew filming the race, I was thinking, oh, it's so hard. Oh, should I really go outside? Oh, no. So I really got the feeling of the race, how hard it is, only when I was there seeing it from the outside perspective. And yeah.
That's incredibly interesting, because sorry to interrupt you, Flo, but I saw you in 2018 going through the Cheviots like a snowplow in human form. Like, you've seen some terrible conditions out there. It's strange to think that you had to see it from outside the race to understand how tough that was.
Yeah, because you see, okay, you think only, okay, you want to get not to the finish line, you want to get to the next CP, and then to the next CP, and then you ultimately want to get to the finish line. And you don't really care about many other things. That's your goal, and you have to have sort of a tunnel vision. But then after, I mean, like 2 years before, I was thinking, oh, shall I go back or no? Do I want to do it? Do I want to trash myself right from the beginning, right from the beginning of the season? And I didn't have a clear answer. But this year I was just looking at the spine race, and then I saw the starting list, and that was like the tipping point. I said, yeah, there's almost everyone is there. We are missing just me. But they said, yeah, I want to do it. I was like, felt that I'm missing. And the other thing is that, well, as I said that when it dropped those 3 words and it went nuts, I will remember the spine family, and I don't know how much it has changed, but that was always like a big point. It was always like warm welcoming. I always love it there. So that was one of I want to see the people again. And that's 6 years since I was there last time. So maybe I will be surprised. I don't know where the race has gone. Things may have changed, but I'm really pretty interested in seeing this.
Yeah, good point. I mean, you're going to be seeing a very different race from the one that you saw in 2018 or when you came back with the Japanese crew. Was that 19 or 20?
I think it was 20. I think it was 20 because 2019 was Jasmine when she won it. To 20, we came there, and then was the COVID. So yeah,
of course.
I think so.
Yeah, it's I was there in 2018. I've been there since. You're going to find the Spine family is a lot bigger than it was the last time you saw it.
Oh, even better.
But you're going to find a lot of familiar faces in there, and there's a reason people still talk about the Spine family. In fact, I'm going to hijack this podcast for a second. The very first time I arrived in Edale as a volunteer on the Spine race, I got put in a bunk in the room with Summit Fever and some of the guys from the media team who I was going to be working with. And I was already really nervous because I'm like, this is the Spine media team. Like, I'm just a little volunteer. And then someone came in and said, oh, by the way, Pab's going to be sleeping in here as well. And I nearly died. Like, I'd only ever seen you as a fan of the race and as this multiple winner. And it says a lot about the Spine family that there's still that humility there. You know, Pav is still going to come and just share a bunk if there's a spare one down there. You know, everyone's in together. So I think you're going to find that atmosphere still there. But to focus in on the race again for a moment then, it's also changed quite a lot from an athlete's perspective. We mentioned Jasmine there, sort of you had some exceptional successes in this race, but the record now is down there at 83 hours. You know, things have changed from an athlete's perspective, and I feel like I've seen a sort of leaning towards these sort of faster runners out of the front, whereas it used to be the domain of your adventure racing people with their incredible resilience and orienteering skills. There seem to be almost two different approaches you can take now. You can go down the adventure route and be ready for anything, or you can take the higher risk but potentially faster route. Is that how it looks from your side as well?
No, I mean, well, I would say first you have to combine these two approaches. That's it. That one is not good enough. And I would say that the process is not like about last few years. I mean, it's been there. I mean, when I did it back in 2014, I had the course record by like 12 hours. Then the next year we got almost to 100 hours, and it's still getting down. And even 2018. Before there was like the heavy snowfall, I think in Bellingham I was in 74 hours or something like that. So we are still on pace on some 86, 87 hours. Now it's faster, but not by that much. And we had, if you look at the conditions on Hadrian's Wall and so on. So I think it started before, and I would actually say that the field back in 2018 was really strong. There was Olivier Bossatelli, who won the Tour de Jean. There was Jim Mann who set the blistering pace. So I would say it's comparable to this year. I mean, it's hard to go with the quality of the field at Spine Race because the Spine Race is specific, and people who success at other races don't necessarily have to do good here. And the other way, someone who's just not fast enough may do well here. So I would say, yeah, the race has changed. Now it's faster than it was, but I would say that what's changed a lot, what's changed more is the outer world, I would say. For example, what I say, the race is now much more physical, but it's not because of the racers, but because of the technology. I mean, back in 2014, when I had my Garmin watches, there were no map watches. The GPX track was just like basic. So it really made a difference if you could navigate using a map. But now, I mean, you have the watches that last 60 hours and they keep vibrating, they keep beeping if you go off course. So now it's much more physical, much more about not. There is still some strategy in sleep and so on, but I think that this, for example, this navigation has been taken out of the equation, and it used to be a big factor. Now it's not, unless you are really tired and do like stupid mistakes, which still you can do. I mean, back in 2018, I did some mistakes at Hadrian's Wall, even though I was there for the 5th time in a row. But when you are tired, you do mistakes.
Always possible.
So that's a lot of changes. But yeah, I think that now you have to. It's always about taking risks, but not doing it recklessly. I mean, if you go too hard, then it's very easy to get injured and do something like that. So actually, I would say that injuries on this race, yeah, of course, sometimes you're unlucky, but it's over this stretch of distance, usually injury is a result of taking too much risks or inadequate preparation. Because I always thought, okay, yeah, someone is unlucky, we were unlucky, but then if you look on bigger data, on more races, simply I would say that the top adventure racers, they somehow avoid it. That they do it. So I would say it's a skill.
Wow. I knew I'd get something insightful from you there, and that was excellent. It's very easy to sort of oversimplify the story of how this race has progressed because of that sort of pivot point of Jasmine came in and just went, bang, 12 hours off the course record, have that. And it was like a lightning strike and it changed everything. But you're right, it was a more gradual progression than that. The ground was laid there for someone to come in and do that. And, you know, Jasmine was the athlete that did it.
I mean, the thing is that Jasmine had not perfect but great conditions. But we have to give her credit for the record, because for the record or a great time, you need a great performance and great conditions. And if you have great conditions and you don't do great performance, you don't get the record, and the other way around. So this is where things combined, and yeah, I think it can be very, very difficult to beat it for anyone. And I don't know, I've been there five times on Spine Race, and every time we got totally different conditions. And I've heard that there's like a lot of water there this year.
Yeah, so we're hearing, yeah.
So that's definitely not good conditions for spine race. Because you need, if the ground is solid, it's much better. Even if it's freezing, it's good. If it's not, then
yeah, enjoy the mud. Yeah. So, you know, with all of that in mind, do you have, and I hate asking this question, everybody wants me to ask it, and it's what the people are listening to hear, you know, but do you have a target in mind coming into this race? You know, have you got an idea in your head of when you might be able to finish?
When I might be able to finish, I mean, well, the obvious target is to finish around the times that people finished in last years. So I guess Wednesday.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as close as it gets. I mean,
I hear you. It's a terrible question, Pav, and I apologize for wording it so badly. But yeah, do you come into a race like this, and are you returning to the Spine with a particular goal in mind?
Of course, I want to win the race again. I mean, you can't really set the goals anything else if you want it in the past. I know that last year, for example, 2022, it was definitely not good with like my preparation. I had some other projects. I had a lot of work and working, like fighting with some minor health issues and so on. But I wouldn't have come if I didn't believe that I can stand against these guys who are just wonderful athletes. If you look at what they've done, so I'm definitely looking forward to it, because I think it will be an incredible fight.
Excellent.
But that's the thing on the Spine Race. You set a goal, you have an idea, but sometimes the goal is just arbitrary. It's an estimation, like especially time-wise. And then you get there to the conditions, and you have to work with that, and you have to be aware that if you are not making much progress because of the conditions, then everybody else is having the same trouble, so you can't be really deprived by that. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go on. Don't let me stop you. Go on.
Let's say that's the difference between if you go for a race and if you go for an FKT or something like that. Because an FKT you fight time, and fight doesn't care what's going on. But here, if you fight the others, and the others are probably having to fight the same conditions, the same weather, the same darkness, and whatever is there. So you don't have to really get stopped by that.
No, very true. And I refer back to you being a human snowplow in 2018 when you're saying I think that's a really interesting point. Do you think maybe you've got a very varied background? I mean, if you look back over your CV, it's long and includes quite a lot of variety. It's adventure racing and time in the mountains, not necessarily always racing or going for time, but going for strenuous and epic. But what that will likely have equipped you with is a very varied toolkit for when those terrible conditions do come along. I imagine that's got to be a really helpful thing to have with you in a race like this.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it gives you kind of confidence that you've been in very difficult conditions, and then if you go there, it's like, then it gives you like the edge. You know that you can dig deeper because I don't say that you are not scared, but I mean, you know more or less what you are doing, and you say, okay, yeah, I've been in something similar, and I know that I've handled this for 12 hours, 15 hours, so I should be fine. And in the worst case, I get down from the Cheviots somehow. So, yeah,
Fantastic.
but that's still, I always, when people speak about safety, and they're also always speaking about the kit and so on, and I said, no, the safety has to start from the runner, from his skills. So even though it's still a race, and you have to think that basically you are going into the mountains and you're going to be in the Cheviots and alone for, I don't know, 8 hours, 12 hours. So I was still, when I was in the race, I always keep thinking I'm going to traverse some mountain range or something, so I have to be equipped for that.
Yeah, excellent. And it makes sense. And we will see what the conditions throw up this time. It will, depending on what the British weather decides it wants to do a couple of weeks from now, it will favour some athletes over others. And I really look forward to seeing how that plays out. You talked a little bit about, your physical condition before the last couple of spine races. I'm going to use that as a little segue to talk about how has your preparation gone for this particular race, and what does your preparation for this race look like? What's an average training week look like for you when the spine is coming?
Well, before I wasn't doing anything special that I would be doing something differently. I had usually 1 or 2 longer trainings, but at spine you get really, really harsh, really difficult conditions. But it doesn't mean that you should be training in these conditions all the time. It's good if you try it on 1 training or 2 training where you also, it's like a mental training, but it makes sense to train in good conditions, get proper recovery and so on. So it was like basic endurance training. I was to make sure that all of my kit is fine. I was thinking about food. Yeah, one thing which I do before the race is, for example, I stopped drinking coffee for 2 weeks because I drink so much coffee that it doesn't make any difference. And at spine race, that's another interesting or important difference between adventure racing and spine race. Adventure racing, you are as a team. So if you have a low point, if you start falling asleep, there is someone there who starts talking to you or helps you. On spine race, no, you will be there You will be there all alone, unless you are with the fellow racers, which I have a lot of stories with Eoin. We shared these moments together.
Yeah.
So I need that. Sometimes I may need to wake up or something, and yeah, coffee is an obvious thing. So that's these tiny things outside the training regime, outside running. That's what I'm trying to do. That's probably the spine specific preparation. I will go through the maps. I will prepare the food. I will do some chili chocolates again, which I used back in 2016, or I don't remember the year. So yeah, so these are the specific preparations.
Excellent. You know what? It's something that we've been talking about behind the scenes on the Spine for a while, that people who do well on this race seem to be people with quite scientific backgrounds and approaches to the event. I believe you're a physicist back there in the...
Yeah, I'm a physicist by education, even though I don't really work there because I didn't want to spend my life in laboratory. But yeah, but I'm very analytical, and I have to say, when you spoke about how the race has developed, I kept racing. I started racing 2014 and was racing until 2018. There was always Eugenie, and most of the editions there was Eoin, and we were all learning. So I would say that at every race, or each of these races, I used slightly different strategy because I had to come up with something new. I mean, in 2015, just having a quick transition and in any of the CPs was enough. But now it's not enough. Now everyone from the top pack has a quick transition. So yeah, I will have to come up with something new. And the thing is that you have to be prepared, and at the same time you have to prepare to improvise, because the conditions change, racers do different decisions. So that's it. So yeah, there is an evolution in strategy, and I don't know what the best strategy will be, because I don't know what Damien, John, or anybody else will do, what the weather will do. I remember that we got the race stop in 2015, where everyone was stopped except me after Haas, which was really, really interesting night. Then we got stopped in 2018 in I was in Burness, the rest was in Bellingham. So that's what I don't want the race to be stopped, but we can have a detour. I don't know. There can be so many things which you have to be prepared and improvise. And that's really the interesting part, because you go there, and even though I've done the race 5 times, I know that just before getting to Kinderscout, we can get all kinds of weather. That's what happened in 2014. Just within 2 hours, we got anything that the British weather can provide.
Absolutely. We've had a couple of races since then where the first day and night of the race, the weather has been so awful that, within a couple of hours of the start of the race, you're already seeing runners that aren't out yet, but they're not looking good. Like, they were not expecting to be this hurt, this tired, this cold, this soon. And you said something during your answer there that I thought was excellent, which was be prepared, but be prepared to improvise. And that's a great
venture racing is about. I mean, that's because venture race, I say you race in changing environment. I mean, luckily here, for example, in adventure racing, we often have to think about the tide. Luckily, we don't have to think about the tide at spine race. So there is a lot of other variables, and that's what's helping me in the race a lot. And at the same time, I have to say sorry or apologize to people that I'm coming to the spine race, because it's been like a pattern that when I come to race, you get some shitty weather. And it was not just spine race, it was also the Three Peaks yacht race and other races. So yeah.
And well, I've got this on record now. Yeah, this is it. I've got this on record. I will refer back to this conversation if the weather goes bad. Amazing. Pavel, I knew I was going to enjoy talking to you today. You've got some incredibly insightful stuff to say about the race, and I really look forward to seeing you out there. I don't want to cut this short, but in the interest of not putting out, 12 hours worth of podcast, I think I might have to leave it there. But just to say thank you so much for this morning. And really, I'm going to be prepared, but be prepared to improvise, put on a T-shirt. That one's going to stick with me. So thanks very much for this morning, Pavel. I really look forward to seeing you in Edale.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Nice talking to you.
Good afternoon, then, James Nobles. James, it's a pleasure to meet you. This is the first time I've chatted to you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, no, it's really lovely to and humbling to be invited to be on this. Yeah, I'm good. I'm just midway through a work day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate that. I know it still seems to sort of blow the minds of some people who are listening to this podcast that, you guys are out there running these ridiculous races and grabbing podiums, but still having full-time jobs in between.
And every other thing that life throws at you as well. So yeah, it's certainly a squeeze trying to fit it all in.
Yeah, well, thank you for squeezing it in. It seems like you've been quite successfully doing so. I was excited to see your name come up on the roster for this race. As I said to you before we started recording, you're an athlete whose name I've seen around a lot. It almost feels like I know you, but hadn't actually had contact with you before. And then there you were on the list for the Spine. Very happy to see that.
Freak me on there.
What made you throw your name in this time around?
So going back 2 years ago or so, I wanted to set myself like a real big challenge. So that was where the idea for the Dragon's Back came about. And I just trained for the Dragon's Back. And that went pretty well. I was really happy with the outcome of that. And then once we'd kind of got through that, I was like, well, what else is there? I know there's lots of other things, but what's kind of a comparable sort of event? What's this really big, really difficult thing that I can just jump into, give it 110%? And the obvious answer was the Spine. So I had a little warm-up in May by doing the Northern Traverse, which is a good 100 miles shorter, or there and thereabouts, 100 miles shorter. That went well, and I was like, right, let's go for this. So I just worked then quite hard behind the scenes trying to get my name in the hat for the Spine. And here we are.
Fantastic. Also, you mentioned earlier, feeling a bit humbled about being on the podcast, which is wild to me because, I'm the one starstruck on this side of the microphone, but you really are. What you've underplayed there is the headlines, which are you won the 2022 Dragon's Back, you won the Northern Traverse, you've just come second in the Cheviot Goat. So, I mean, you are somebody a lot of people will have their eyes on going into this race. How are you feeling going into it? Because you've had a long time to think about the upcoming Spine race now. How's the preparation gone? How are you feeling going in January? Have you seen the roster?
Joe, I can play on the pure ignorance going into this because I don't know how many other people say it, but I am really, really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to everything that I think it's going to entail, like the challenge of just being out there for multiple days, trying to deal with all of the things that it throws at you in the best possible way. I've done as much training as I can. I've dedicated, I'd say, at least the last 8 months pretty much exclusively just to training for this. I'd maybe say possibly even last year, because when I was training for the Northern Traverse, I was training for the Northern Traverse with the Spine in mind. So I kind of made it public that I was aiming for the Spine actually like a year ago when our daughter was born. So it's kind of been like this a full year of just mentally and physically getting ready for the Spine. So in terms of feeling at the moment, I'm absolutely knackered. Just trying to manage all of the training, trying to have enough food, trying to get enough sleep, all of those sorts of things, as well as being a dad and being a husband and everything else. It's been a lot. So I'm really looking forward. I've got about 10 more days of hard training left. And then I'm just going to enjoy maybe 10 days of just a bit more chilled out, let my body rest. And then fingers crossed, get to that start line feeling very pumped and ready to go. And yeah, the start list is, for the men's and the women's field, is absolutely incredible. So I'm really excited just to be lining up alongside some of those people who've done exceptionally well at this event and other events in the past. And all being well, giving them a pretty good run for their money.
Fantastic. I mean, we certainly hope so. And I mean, obviously, it's a long journey coming to the Spine race for anybody. You know, whatever your intentions are coming into it, it's a big undertaking and a huge thing to juggle around day-to-day life. Now, you coming into this event, we've seen some of the other names on this roster. We've got people in there who've, you know, done this already 2, 3, 4 times. There is Ian Keith in there who could probably fall asleep in Edale and still find his way to Kirkyeton. Like, how much have you had to do on that side, like getting yourself ready for navving your way up that course and planning where and when you might sleep? Like, how's the preparation for that side of things been?
So I live in Cheltenham, which isn't the closest to the Pennine Way. I'm really lucky that my parents and my wife's family, they all live like up in Yorkshire, and we've spent a lot of time up in Yorkshire over the last year. So I have, like, the Black Hill is literally like about 1.5 miles away from my parents' house. So that's like,
useful.
That's good. But that's only like the bottom. So I reckon like the bottom, I don't know, 30, 40 miles. We went on a holiday to Northumberland in the summer. So I was able to do about, I don't know, an 80 to 100 mile stretch of it around that kind of area. And get as familiar as possible, like with the sort of around Alston and north and south of there. So I've had a good look at like kind of Crossfell, all the way up to Hadrian's Wall. And then I did the Cheviot Goat. And one of my main reasons for doing the Cheviot Goat was just to see like, how bad are these bogs that everyone keeps talking about? And actually,
how bad are they?
Well, they were frozen when we got there. So,
of course.
So, but that threw up its own challenges. So, I have had chance to have a look at the route. But in an ideal world, I would have been able to spend much more time on that route. But you can only do so much. So maybe what I'm lacking in knowledge of the course, I hope to make up in other areas of my running capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't mean to imply there at all, James, that not knowing the course makes it like impossible for you to do well here. That's not the case. It's just sort of an extra thing to think about going into it.
I certainly don't know it off the back of my hand like some of the more seasoned guys will do, that's for sure. But what I was doing was actually earlier on this week, I pulled up all the GPS files of quite a few people and I was overlaying them on top of each other just to see like where people were potentially like straying quite heavily from those lines. So even if I don't know it physically, the route, like I know where those places are where people have gone off course, they've gone wrong. So that will certainly be in my mind when I'm in those kind of places. So as long as I'm not completely sleep deprived and I've got a little bit of brain capacity there, I hope to be able to have like reasonable nav all the way up.
That is an excellent, very data-driven approach to that problem. I like that. And would you say that's sort of fairly typical of how you prepare for a race? I often try and sort of get a feel for what kind of athlete the people I'm talking to are, because I've spoken to some people who just seem to knock out 100 milers for fun with very sort of little structured planning, and other people who are data scientists and precise about their training, calorie intake and everything else. Like, where do you sit on that scale?
I'd say if you've got maybe like the data scientist, like the really data-driven approach on the right-hand side, and maybe just to kind of roll up your sleeves and go for it on the left-hand side, I'm probably like 90% down that data-driven side. So I've got, I mean, my job, like I'm a researcher by kind of, by trade. So like a lot of my work is like fairly analytical. And therefore it's really easy for me to be kind of pulling plans together, like thinking it all through, trying to like have some good structure there, but have some progression in it. So yeah, I certainly am quite meticulous when it comes to the planning for these sorts of things. I don't think like I don't know, I've seen lots of other examples too of like people pulling some cracking Excel spreadsheets together of all of the kit and everything like that. I've got the same at my side. So it's just, I think, isn't it? It's just about people trying to find like what they can do in order to feel as prepared as possible for this. So I haven't tried to wing any of this. I've tried to think as much of it through as possible. And if that pays off, then great. If it doesn't, then I can blame it on Excel.
Yeah, I like it. Excel needs to take accountability.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm all on board with that. The spine race isn't necessarily an event that lends itself to a cavalier attitude. It's not necessarily something you'll thrive in if you just throw yourself at it and hope. There are a lot of variables. I've got to ask here, this is definitely an aside. What's your sort of area of research, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's called system science. So just trying to understand, like, it's all to do with public health and system science. So trying to understand, like, what causes these problems to occur and what can we do to prevent them occurring again in the future.
I just ask because it sort of plays into a loose theory that we've sleeplessly worked up behind the scenes on the spine race, that there seems to be this correlation between people with a science background and people with an ability to do well in this event. And I can only imagine it is something to do with that crunching down large amounts of information and using it to make a plan and, you know, find steps forward from it. It really seems to lend itself to that. So
I don't want to book that trend. But there's the other bit to it, and again, there's lots of doctors, there's lots of vets, there's lots of people who've spent like an awful long time kind of developing skills for their profession. And I think one of the big things that kind of runs alongside of that is just this, like, you've got to be very happy to spend probably quite a lot of time on your own with your head down, just continuously like progressing, like either your training, your research, etc. forwards. And it's that mindset, I think, that translates so well into this sort of stuff, as opposed to, I think, like, the problem solving is one bit of it, but I think people who've gone through sort of a long academic kind of pathway, like, there's just so much, like, just constantly turning up is required, and you have to do the vast majority of it on your own. So I think that bit lends itself quite nicely to this kind of running.
Yeah, Tin, I'm glad you're backing up our theory as well. The rest of the media team will be pleased with that. Yeah. And it makes sense. These are very, very long journeys with an awful lot of research to do. And this goes right down to, you know, there'll be people listening to this who are signed up for the sprint or maybe other races outside the spine. They do exist, I've heard. And it's an interesting thing to hear that these are long journeys with an awful lot of information that you need to take in, and it sort of does make sense. You guys from a research and a scientific background are used to playing a long game.
Yeah, exactly. We certainly are, and you're certainly used to solving problems. Like, things never go to plan, so you're just constantly trying to find workarounds. You're just not trying to find workarounds in a highly sleep deprived state. So that's another thing to contend with on something like the spine.
Yeah, well, sleep deprivation is always something that comes up on the spine race. It's inevitable in a rolling 24-hour event. So since you've brought it up, is that something you sort of are feeling prepared for? Because, I mean, Lord knows it's a difficult thing to train yourself for.
I'll be honest. Like, I think I'm just going to have to roll with the punches on this one. I've got a strategy in place with regards to, like, how much sleep I think I need and maybe when I need to have that sleep. But if you're falling asleep on your feet, I'm just going to have to roll with it. I'm not going to be too forward planning with regards to when I'm going to sleep, how long I'm going to sleep for. If I need to lay down in the heather somewhere for 10 minutes, I'm going to lay down in the heather and sleep, as long as the conditions are kind of helpful in that regard. But no, I'm not planning out, I'm going to sleep half an hour here, half an hour there, because I just don't think it will unfold that way.
I know. I think that's an excellent answer. I mean, anyone listening to this who sort of knows the spine race well will know it's there's not a great deal of point in having a firm plan and trying to force the race to stick to that plan, because 10 things will punch you in the face between Edale and checkpoint 1. And the power of the micro nap, we've seen that resurrect some walking dead runners before. So yeah, absolutely. And now, you know, it's easy with something like the Spine race to get bogged down in how hard it is. It's huge, and it's January and the weather's atrocious, and we all know that stuff. There must be something you're looking forward to, because you said you were excited about it. So what is it that draws you to these kind of events?
I think all of those things that you just described as things that people maybe aren't looking forward to is probably what I am looking forward to. I'm looking forward to being out there for a hell of a long time. I'm looking forward to being out there, hopefully in some, I know this might come back and bite me in the butt, but some pretty miserable conditions. Like if it's driving rain and very windy, then I'm not going to be overly happy. But if it's raining on its own, if it's windy on its own, if it's snowy on its own, no, I'm just looking forward to just like one really big adventure over a long period of time. I know there's going to be sleep deprivation, but there's something really satisfying in getting through something that is incredibly difficult. And so it's just the long game. Like I absolutely love suffering for a long period of time. That might sound weird, but there is something in it. Like you very rarely get to experience that. And when you do these like long, hard things, you experience it. And like the feeling at the end and the feeling throughout it, whilst it might not be particularly like enjoyable at that very moment in time, when you've kind of suffered through something, either within the race or after the race, it's kind of like a feeling like no other, really. So, yeah, that's what actually draws me in. I'm certainly looking forward to running with some brilliant people. Like, don't get me wrong, that's going to be incredible too. I'm looking forward to meeting the people in the checkpoints and meeting all the staff. I'm looking forward to the course and like what that's got to offer. But yeah, as much as anything, I'm really looking forward to just the challenge of this kind of an event. And not
excellent.
Clue whether or not you can get to the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, you've just nailed in a few sentences there sort of what the Spine race is in a way, that it's supposed to be a finish line that might be beyond your reach when you start the race, and you are certainly going to face some times in isolation in difficult conditions, and it sounds like you're someone who's going to thrive in there, because ultimately it's true. The reason that we have such big emotions at that finish line is when you've put yourself through something this hard. The reward for it is huge.
Yeah, and it's not just the race, I suppose. Like I've dedicated, for example, like the last 8 months and however long of my life to training for this kind of thing. So like the sacrifices that are made along the way, that is a massive motivator for me when trying to get through these sorts of things. Like in the Dragon's Back, like I was 5 miles away from the finish and I was literally crying. Because like all of a sudden, like it just gets overwhelming. Like you've kind of got towards the end of this thing and you realize that some of those sacrifices that you've made along the way are actually like, it has been somewhat worthwhile. So yeah.
Yeah, I suppose vindication isn't something I've talked about very much with that finish line, but that's a part of it as well. You know, it was worth all of this toil. Yeah.
But that is it obviously had the flip side to it too if you don't get to the end. But hey, let's not think about that bit.
Yeah, no, we're not planning for that. Is there a particular part of the course you're looking forward to? It's almost an odd question on the run into the winter race because it's going to be dark 17, 18 hours a day, but you'll see bits of it.
I'll be honest, I don't think there is like any bit in particular that I'm really looking forward to. I certainly love being in like some of the exposed elements. So being up on Crofts Fell, being like up in the Yorkshire Dales, like in certain places, like just where you feel like you're really out there in the elements. They're the places that I'm looking forward to. I'm not looking forward to the more built up aspects or kind of like those, but no one's going to be looking forward to those bits. So I absolutely loved like when I recce'd it, the section from Middleton over towards Dufton, and just like following that river all the way up the valley was just beautiful. But I did it in summer, so it might be quite different at this time of year. But no, that was absolutely gorgeous. It was just, I think, like 10 miles of just this really gradual incline, and then finishing off with like High Cub Nick and dropping down there into Dufton was beautiful. So that'll be nice. But whether or not we're there in the daytime, who knows?
Yeah, who knows indeed. And one thing I want to touch on that we maybe haven't mentioned is you're not somebody who's sort of been in the sport of ultra running for years and years. You know, this is a fairly new thing to you still. So, being conscious of the fact that we're 20 minutes into an interview that I said would definitely only be 20 minutes long, could you give us a sort of potted version of your little ultra running career so far?
Yeah, so it is fairly short. Like, I helped a friend actually who's also doing the Spine race this year, so Stu Heaviside. I helped him on his Bob Graham. I think he was in maybe like 2018 or 19. And I just became like absolutely enthralled by it when I saw like the support crew around it. I saw like what he was going through and how difficult it was. So yeah, I supported him on that. And then it was 2 years later, I think, where I went out and did my own Bob Graham, loved it. So I was like, right, well, the next obvious step is to maybe try and complete the 3 rounds in the UK. So I went and did the Paddy Buckland and the Charlie Ramsey, and it was just that I met some really good friends down here in Cheltenham, and a few of those guys had done the Dragons back. So that then became the next obvious step. So I volunteered at that, signed up and raced it. And that was last year. And then, so I haven't, like, I could probably count the amount of actual races I've done, probably on maybe 1.5 hands. I haven't like done that many races, but I just really like being out there for a long period of time in some of the lovely scenery that we've got here. So yeah, that's it. It's certainly not been a long career, but I love it. So this last 2-3 years, I've just knuckled down and enjoyed the ride.
Fantastic. I gotta say, I was already looking forward to seeing what you get up to in January, and I'm really looking forward to it now. I've got all the time in the world for somebody with this much obvious love for doing this, and it really is clear here that you're thriving at this. We could describe your rise here as meteoric. I think it's been pretty rapid. So, I mean, congratulations on everything you've achieved already. It's been a great couple of years for you, and long may that continue.
Yeah. It's so long as it's still enjoyable and still like manageable around everything else that we've got on. Then there's a few more things, at least in the short-term pipeline, that I really want to nail down.
Fantastic. Well, look, James, I'm gonna let you get back to your day. You've got a lot to juggle, and just remains to say, thank you very much for chatting to me today. I really appreciate it. Have a very Merry Christmas, and I look forward to meeting you in person in Edale.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
No worries. Have a good day, bud.